I've been busy, guys. I know, I haven't posted in a while. I'm sorry about that. But the work, guys, meetings, emails, trying to co-run a business. Yeah. So anyways, let's talk about buying a Panasonic GH5 in 2019 and the death of Micro Four Thirds. Okay, just so you know guys, I really have been busy and I don't normally chill out on a beach with jeans pants and steel-toed boots. We had a 4-day shoot covering a conference at a beach resort, and what you see was filmed during our break at 120 frames per second at 1080p using the GH5. I've owned and used the GH5 for almost 3 months now, and I have to say, this camera is a beast. I'm still trying to find my groove and get better at filming with the GH5, but I'm loving the journey so far. Now, if you're into photography, I might talk about my experience taking pictures with the GH5 in another video, but my channel focuses on cinematography, gaming, and tech. You like any of those things, please click on that subscribe button if you haven't already for more content to come. There is so much competition around the price point of the GH5, and I mean good competition. For a little more, you can get the Sony a7 III or Nikon Z6, and for a little less, we have the Fuji X-T3, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K, Panasonic G9, and for even less than that, we have the Sony a6400. All those cameras can shoot 4K, all except the Nikon and Sony cameras I mentioned can shoot 4K at up to 60 FPS, and all can shoot higher frame rates at 1080p. The Blackmagic does have an additional crop with that, but the Blackmagic and Nikon Z6 can film in RAW pending a firmware update for the Nikon, but as you can see, competition is tight. So why pick a 2-year-old Panasonic GH5 now in 2019? After focusing on what I really wanted in my next camera purchase, what would best suit my business needs, the type of ads my team and I make, 80% of which are run and gun style, I picked the GH5. Considering you're watching this video, you're probably interested in buying a new mirrorless camera. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what do you primarily plan to film, and which camera and its features can best suit your criteria. I wanted high bitrate video files, 120 frames per second at 1080p, 4K 60 FPS, unlimited recording, and I wanted IBIS. And wow, now that I've used the GH5, I don't know how I worked without in-body image stabilization. So much fun, and it really just shocks me. I'm hand-holding with a 25mm lens, a 50mm full-frame equivalent, and it's like I'm on a tripod. Even more impressive, at 150mm, that's 300mm full-frame equivalent, still very stable footage. I mean, it's amazing. Pair IBIS with 120 frames per second 1080p or 60 FPS 4K and slow that in a 24 frame rate timeline. Wow. You put the GH5 on a gimbal, the footage looks smooth as butter. Sometimes the IBIS of the GH5 counters the balance of what the gimbal is trying to provide, but for the most part, 98% of the footage will look good keeping IBIS on. Okay, enough about IBIS. I also wanted a camera with decent battery life and rugged dependability. I mean, what is the point of having unlimited record time if the battery life doesn't hold up? Thankfully, it is pretty good. A little over 2 hours of continuous 4K recording, and I mean simultaneously recording on 2 SD cards. Dual SD card recording brings me to dependability. I have experienced SD card failure where some of the footage I recorded on my Samsung NX500 had a few seconds of corruption. If you've never experienced this issue, great. This is then just an extra bonus for you if you decide to pick up this camera. But With the two SD card slots, you have other options. You can decide to set up the camera to record only on one SD card at a time, and when one gets full, it will automatically switch to the second SD card and continue recording. Or you can choose to record only video to one SD card and only your pictures to the second SD card. The GH5 also has a weather-sealed body that feels well built in the hand, giving me confidence it will take a little banging around when traveling. I still can't push my camera yet in crazy weather as I haven't invested in weather-sealed lenses yet, but all in due time. Also, I live in a fairly hot country. I mean, I'm roasting right now in this office, high humidity, and we do a lot of filming in the sunlight. The GH series from Panasonic are known for being dependable cameras in this regard, something Sony is slowly trying to do better at with their newer cameras. Still, the GH5, I'm doing lots of filming in the hot sun, and this camera never feels hot to the touch. Now, looking at my requirements I just listed, the other cameras I mentioned have some of the features as well, but only the GH5 has everything I want covered. Notice I didn't include best image quality and autofocus. If I was looking for the best image quality, I'd have bought a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K with so many flavors of RAW and ProRes video codecs to choose from, or the Nikon Z6 considering that the RAW firmware update for video on a full-frame mirrorless camera is coming. Nikon doesn't have 4K 60 FPS though, and the Blackmagic cameras definitely aren't known for being reliable. With that said, the footage you can get out of the GH5 still looks awesome, and it's great for the ads we produce. 98% of the time, I'm also filming behind the camera. The other 2% of me being in front of the camera where autofocus is really helpful is when I'm making a YouTube video. I usually manually focus though, so the lackluster autofocus of the GH5 doesn't bother me, and yes, I can confirm the autofocus on the GH5 is not great, even compared to the hybrid autofocus of my old Samsung NX500. And this is using the latest firmware on the GH5 as of March 2019, which is version 2.4. The autofocus works fine for this talk to camera setup here in my office, sometimes, and depending on which lens I'm using, but in other situations, I just haven't found it reliable enough. You want the best autofocus, look at the Sony a6400 or a7 III. I mean, you could look at Canon's offering as well, but for the EOS R, that would be a heftier initial investment with a decent native lens. Then there's the RP, but that's more a 1080p video camera, and that's best suited for me for taking pictures. Now, if you're looking at unlimited record times, only the Sony a6400 and the GH5 are left remaining as possible buys, and the GH5 has the better battery life to support long record sessions. All the other stuff the GH5 offers are just icing on the cake. A fully articulating screen, so helpful in getting shots at different camera angles, so many custom function buttons, which I mentioned I liked about Panasonic cameras in my Panasonic G7 review, but you have a lot more options for customization with the Panasonic GH5. And the cool part about setting them up is that you don't need to click on the menu button, then navigate through the menu system to get to the function button settings. All you have to do is hold down for a few seconds the function button that you want to reassign, then select what you want the function button to do. Speaking of the menu system, this camera is packed with a lot of things to learn and use. You've got histograms, focus peaking, waveform, vector scope, and I do appreciate all the color profiles it offers: Cine V, Cine D, HLG, and of course the flat picture profile of Vlog to get the best dynamic range out of the GH5. I appreciate a clean HDMI output, and I do like that it has a full-size HDMI port on the camera. Of course, the GH5 isn't perfect. I would love for it to have better autofocus. It would be the complete package if it had that. Better autofocus would be so helpful for gimbal work where manually focusing can be more challenging depending on your setup, especially if you're a solo filmmaker. Also, speaking of manual focusing, I do love that you have two flavors of assistance with magnification, using either the full screen or picture-in-picture. But I dislike that the feature only works before you start recording. I would love magnification to continue working while recording. I'm not sure if using an external recorder I can get this to happen, but I think I need an external recorder anyways, because the focus peaking I don't 100% trust with the 3.5-inch screen on the GH5. I would much rather have that manual focus triangle in the Canon EOS R that once you've lined them up, you know you're in focus on a particular subject, versus the grains of sand displayed with the GH5. I'd love a built-in ND filter solution like the Panasonic FZ2500, or even a filter adapter like the Canon EOS R, instead of having to screw the ND filters on top of the lens. I'd love better low light capabilities, but I know the GH5 wasn't going to be great at this. And in the next 2 months, I'll be buying a Metabone speed booster, as well as the Sigma 18-35 to combat this issue. And besides, I like my subjects anyways. I actually suggest when you're first starting out filmmaking, you invest in some lights instead of the fanciest, fastest low light lens, regardless of which camera you're using, as you can probably find some decent lights for a cheaper price than the lenses in the first place. The last two issues with the GH5. First, I wish the camera could be charged via the USB Type-C port. I love that my old NX500 can be used and charged at the same time via the USB port. Secondly, I do wish the grip for the camera was slightly bigger, like how the Panasonic G9 is, but other than that, the camera does feel good in the hand. I just wish the grip was slightly bigger to fully fill up my grip. So now let's talk about the full frame camera craze and the death of Micro Four Thirds. People have talked about the death of Micro Four Thirds for a long time, kind of reminding me of, on the gaming side, when people kept saying Nintendo will die as a company, or PC gaming is dead. Sensationalism gets views, and near the end of last year, this notion that the Micro Four Thirds camera's days are numbered came from a fairly popular camera YouTuber. So just so you know, I liked most of this person's videos, but that video was nothing more than clickbait. That person justified the video by saying it was their job to predict the future and to make sure they didn't recommend to people to buy into a camera system whose future was uncertain. That person went into detail as to why Micro Four Thirds cameras' futures look grim, but only 4 months later, what does this person do? They recommend a Micro Four Thirds camera. They recommended purchasing the GH5 for video versus buying the full frame Panasonic S1, giving a good reason with the launch lineup of lenses for the Panasonic full frame cameras being lackluster compared to what you can use and get right now on the GH5. But if this person was truly concerned about the shaky future of Micro Four Thirds, I don't think they would be telling anyone to buy a GH5 in 2019. Look, I bring this up not to bash on this YouTuber, but to let anyone who is considering purchasing a GH5, who is concerned about the longevity of Micro Four Thirds, don't be. I have a Samsung NX500. Samsung abandoned the NX line of cameras, probably because one of their CEOs at the time only loved smartphones. But did my camera automatically stop working or become inefficient for what it needed to do? No. That camera paid for itself back and then some. The GH5 will do the same. Anyways guys, like I said, the Panasonic GH5 is a beast. And if you've asked yourself what you plan to film, and the GH5 can do the job, I highly recommend buying it. The GH5 without a lens is being sold right now for $1,500 US, and I recommend that you get the Vlog firmware upgrade bundle for the same price, because if you purchase the Vlog upgrade separately, that's an extra $100 US, which makes this bundle a sweet little savings. The extra battery isn't as good as the original Panasonic battery, but I do get about an hour and a half of record time, so it's not that bad. And the SD card I got with it is not the one that they have advertised on the picture on Amazon. It feels cheap, but it works. I like the little kit bag that comes with it. I like the camera cleaning kit. I don't even bother to use the little 32GB SD card that comes with the bundle. But hey, it's nice to have as a starter SD card if you don't have one. So anyways guys, if you plan on getting the Panasonic GH5 and you want to support this channel, I have an Amazon affiliate link in the description below. No extra cost to you by clicking that link, but it does help me out to provide more content on this channel. Anyways guys, if you found this video informative, please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.